People are getting their food and getting settled, I think we ought to get started because we are here from about 12 to 1, so I want to make sure we're respectful of your time. So this seminar is really geared towards faculty and graduate students that are doing research, and the idea behind the seminar is really to share inspiring success stories with you and give you a sense of what's coming out of the U of A and the great things that are happening across campus, so that you can look at your own research in your lab and think about ways that you might be able to do the same or something similar. So we're really fortunate to have Dr. Kevin Boesen here to talk to us about SinfoníaRx. I'll talk very briefly about Tech Launch Arizona, what we do, who we are, and I'll keep it really short so that we can get into the main program. I do want to mention that, obviously if you want to learn more about how you can actually work with us, because we're not going to be process focused today, please do reach out to us. I'll provide our contact information. Just pick up the phone, drop us an email, and we'd be happy to come out and just talk about maybe ideas that you have. You're not sure what you're going to do with them. We're glad to just sit down with you and brainstorm and think through those things. So I realized I didn't introduce myself. So I am Rocky Gibbons. I'm the Associate Director for Biomedical and Life Sciences Licensing for TLA. And my colleague, Lisa Lynn, oh, there you are. So Lisa Lynn is the College of Medicine Licensing Manager. So she and I are really the main points of contact for all of you in the health sciences. So I cover not only the health sciences, but I also help oversee life sciences for U of A. I wanted to mention a couple of things about TLA. So we are going through a leadership transition, and we have Dave Allen sitting here in the back. Dave started TLA, and he is retiring, he reminded me, in just about 7 days, 7 work days. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank Dave for his leadership. If we could just give him a quick round of applause. And I'm happy to welcome Doug Hockstead, who is sitting next to him. He will be taking over Dave's role as our leadership for TLA, and so we're looking forward to all the great things that Doug is going to do. We're counting on you. So let me just, oh, okay. So I just want to thank our sponsors for lunch. They make lunch possible at these seminars. So how many of you are actually working with Tech Launch today? Oh, good. Good. So I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new faces, which is a great mix to have. So we're really a customer service organization. We're here to help you look at your research and really figure out what the market implications might be. And then along the way, we figure out how we might be able to help you protect them through various mechanisms of intellectual property. Could be copyright, it could be patents, and we work with you to figure that out. We have 3 major functions within our office. Tech transfer is obviously a large piece of that, which is the IP protection. This is the intellectual property protection, the licensing. We also have a business intelligence team to really dig into the marketing and whether it's patentable and help us make those decisions. And then, of course, the business development, because as you know, we help faculty start companies. And that's exactly why Kevin is here today, is to talk to you about a startup story. We also have some support in our office for SBIR STTRs, and of course the Tech Park Arizona, which hopefully most of you are familiar with the tech parks that sit out on Rita Road, and then the new ones that will be developed eventually, which is at the Bridges. This is just an overview of our process, so I'm not going to spend too much time here, but there are a couple of things that I wanted to point out to you. Obviously, it always starts with the research that you're conducting, and then eventually it makes its way through this process. And I want to point out to you asset development. This is a fund that's controlled by TLA and allows us to fund projects that need a little bit of help that isn't just research. It's mostly around commercializing a technology. If you could just do these key experiments, a company might be interested in taking on that technology and developing a product. We have funding to do that. The other aspect that I want to point out is, again, the creating the team and the business aspect. This is really our new business development or venture development team. So you're not expected to do the startup on your own. There's a lot of support to help you think through that and to put those pieces together. And of course, at the end of the day, we want to see impact, right? We want to see our products on the market benefiting people and patients to create that impact for the university. I'm not going to spend too much time on this either. This is just to give you a sense of the type of activity that's happening. So we did 15 startups last year. We hope to do 16 this year. Inventions reported are really unique inventions that came to our office. So you can see there's a lot of activity here at the U of A. Oops, I went way ahead. There we go. I've highlighted in blue the startups that are life sciences based that came out of the health sciences. So as you can see, we did 15 in blue. So you can see it's maybe a little bit less than half health life sciences just this past year. But it's about even most years. I just wanted to mention I-Core as well. This is a program, this is an NSF-sponsored program. We are a grant recipient for doing this. This is great for startups to really get to an understanding for your customer base and if there really is a home for your technology. And the next cohort, does anyone from TLA remember when that starts? There's a summer cohort, so if you're interested, think about applying to this now so that you can get in the queue.
It's May.
Is it May? Okay. And then I wanted to mention the next event that we have coming up on April 25th. We're lucky to have the IBM Master Inventor coming out to the U of A for various other reasons, and we were able to pull her for a talk. And that'll be on the 25th from 2 to 3, and it's in the Agave room at the Student Union. So, if you're able to make it, that would be great. This is also recognizing World IP Day, which happens to be April 26th. And the theme this year for World IP Day, which is set by the World Intellectual Property Organization, is Women Inventors. So it's great that Tara happened to be coming to the U of A around that time. Here's our contact information. So feel free to reach out to Lisa or me if there's something you want to talk with us about. I'm going to turn this over to Kevin to introduce himself and then also to talk about Sinfonia.
We have to switch 2 mics, one for the room and one for the live stream.
And I'm just glad I got to go first so that you all didn't have to watch me do this.
There you go. It takes a village, right?
It does. With 2 mics, it does.
I know, right? I'm like a master. So thank you to TLA for the opportunity to present today. It is really fun to be a success story. What's interesting is I started the program back in 2006, so 12 years ago. I was able to condense our successes to 7 slides. So if I were to do this presentation about everything we did wrong on this journey, it'd probably be 7,000 slides. So I think one of the most important messages as I talk through it is you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to have a real buttoned-up plan, a real buttoned-up strategy. Just be brave enough to have confidence in your ideas and get them out there. So my name's Kevin Boesen. I'm a pharmacist by training. Graduated from the University of Arizona College of Pharmacy in 1996. Had a career as a community pharmacist, worked in industry, both on the clinical side as well as I did a lot of sales, did some sales and sales management and medical devices, and then came back on faculty at the College of Pharmacy in 2004. So that's a little bit about my background. SinfoníaRx is obviously, it's important to me. I love it. It's my baby. It was a concept that I first thought about in 2005, really, and wrote a business plan for you. So I'm going to take you through what we are and what it looks like today. But I will say one of the other points that I'll make in terms of what's important, in addition to being brave and having confidence in yourself and leveraging partnerships and support that you can, but you have to have a problem that you're trying to fix and a mission that you're trying to solve. And so for us, it really is the growing problem with drug-related adverse events. So one of the original studies that looked at the amount of money we spend on medications was done here at the University of Arizona. And basically, the result was for every dollar we spend on medications, we spend another dollar managing the adverse effects associated with that medication usage. As you can see, that study was recently replicated as recently in data looked at 2 years ago, is both the cost of medications is increasing as well as the cost associated with medication-related adverse events. And we still spend about $1 managing adverse events for every dollar we spend on medications. So this is the problem. This is really what I was trying to solve. I obviously haven't solved it. The problem's getting worse. So from a business standpoint, my market's getting bigger would be the other way to look at it. But healthcare in general is becoming more complex. And so really, if you think about the idea that I had is as a pharmacist, I know the value that pharmacists can have working with patients. And so what I wanted to do was put pharmacists in front of these patients that were having drug-related problems to try to help better manage their medications. And so that really was the mission. I found people to help me on the journey who shared that same mission, who understood the value that pharmacists can have in solving these problems. And so we created really a snowball's effect over the last 12 years of a very humble start to where we are today. But I would say, be focused and have a mission, have a true problem that you're trying to solve. Nobody gets excited about, people get excited about making money, but you can't sustain sort of an idea that your goal is you're going to drive money. Your goal and what people get up and what they're driven for and what they want to do every day is to make a difference. And this is how we were going to make a difference. So what do we look like today? We're a technology and services company is how I like to describe ourselves. So we have a technology side. We have software that ingests data from health plans, pharmacy benefit management companies, electronic health records, and looks for drug-related problems. The concept is if I have a pharmacist sitting down doing a medication review, looking at everything the patient takes, how many different physicians they see, how many different chronic conditions that they have, how many different pharmacies they go to, what would that pharmacist do and what are the high-level things that they'd look at, and I have my software analyze that. The software then identifies drug-related problems and pushes those out to pharmacists or pharmacy staff that then do outreach to patients. So that's the services component of what we do. So I have the technology and the services. That in and of itself has been an interesting journey for me in that oftentimes I talk about what we do as Tron. I get the users versus the programmers. They're always sort of butting heads of the clinical staff wants things to do things a certain way, the technology staff wants things to do a certain way. So that's a lot of what we try to do from an innovation is they're all united around the common goal. And so as long as I keep them focused on, hey, at the end of the day, we're trying to help an individual patient that either has a serious drug-related problems or is at risk for it. And that's how I can unite people in the company around that common goal. Our clients include a couple of the Fortune 10 companies. Walmart is one of our large clients. They're Fortune 1. There's a PBM and a retail pharmacy and a health plan that are merging. Following that merge, they'll be the Fortune 2. So we'll work with Fortune 1 and Fortune 2 companies, which as a sales guy is kind of cool to sell programs to companies at that level. But we work with basically all the national health plans and for the top 5 PBMs. We operate out of Tucson downtown. We've got great offices. We're going to do a grand opening. We just moved our corporate headquarters from a small warehouse on Stone and Toole into the Pioneer Building, which is the historic hotel in downtown Tucson that was built in the 20s. We're restoring the hotel's dining room as part of our project. That should be done in a couple months, and we'll do a grand opening. So our technology business support is really located in downtown Tucson, which is also neat to be able to contribute to the community by renovating a historic icon downtown, but also creating jobs downtown and opportunities for people. We have then a hub and spoke type of model where the technology, the business operations run on downtown Tucson, And then the services are primarily out of 5 call centers that we have. One is in Tucson, one's in Phoenix. Both of those are affiliated with the university, and I'll talk a little bit about how. We have one in Columbus, Ohio, affiliated with Ohio State University, one in Gainesville, Florida, unofficially affiliated with the University of Florida, and then we just opened one about a month ago in Austin, Texas, that'll be affiliated with the University of Texas at Austin. For us to be able to reach out to patients and do that regionally is a huge opportunity, but also to maintain university relationships allows advantages from us from an innovation, R&D standpoint. But also one of the things that I'm passionate about was the ability to still interact with students. One of the things that I loved most about my role in faculty was the ability to be in front of students, interact with students, have that energy and that youthfulness of a college environment. So to be able to replicate that has been something that's helped me stay energized and excited about what we do. Our software piece is called Rx Companion. This is one of the neat things too, is when you're making stuff as you go, you can create basically a mascot for your technology. So from a marketing standpoint, I always try to get people excited about what it is that we do, and it's hard to explain complex health information. Obviously, we know with healthcare reform, we've heard it's too complicated. Amazon just sort of released an announcement that they're pulling back on some of their pharmacy distribution ideas because it's too complicated. So for me, part of it is just breaking that down into what do we do. So we have technology. This is our technology, Rx Companion. Plus he's a cute little guy, right? So what the technology does, I talked about it a little bit, is it does first population health. So it's taking all the data that we receive from all the different sources. We actually now, we started with about 1,000 patients, was 2006. We now have about 60 million patients in our database. So almost 1 in every 5 to 6 Americans, basically, have data running through our system, which is probably, I don't know, 1 to 5 or 6 of you guys. We look for drug-related problems. So we're looking for things like age, conditions, number of physicians that they see, number of pharmacies that they use, and we identify a risk group. Once we identify that risk group, then we do analysis within that risk group to further look for the specific problems. So the risk group tells us these are the patients that are likely to have issues. The second piece of it is mining that data to look for drug-drug interactions, drug-condition interactions, drugs patients should be on that they're not based on treatment guidelines, duplicate therapies associated with multiple prescribers, duplicate therapies associated with multiple pharmacies, change in a patient's situation. So for example, they were in a hospital and now they're discharged. So data like that will trigger us to identify real problems. We then have a prioritization process where every problem that we identify is triaged based on complexity and urgency. So our primary goal is to do patient outreach. And so we want to know if I have 60 million patients and there's, let's say, 2 million of them that are at risk, who's at the top of the list for today? So that's where we use the alerting process to triage who gets called first. And then our clinical complexity allowed us to scale the business model. So one of the challenges with advancing, how many of you are pharmacists or in the pharmacy space? So a few. One of the challenges with pharmacists is pharmacists are very highly educated, have great amount of clinical expertise, which also means they're expensive. So I really only want to use a pharmacist when I need a pharmacist. So if I'm going to call a patient up and I'm going to verify the data that I have, so I want to see, just because it looks like they're on 2 medications, maybe they're well educated and they know they were supposed to stop one and they threw that away and now they have another one that they're using. Or maybe it's being monitored. Or maybe there's other information that I can't see in the data. So I don't necessarily want the pharmacist to be the ones to make those calls all the time. So then I use support staff. I have pharmacy technicians, and then I have well over 200 pharmacy students at the University of Arizona, Ohio State University, and University of Florida that participate in the program. So the other thing that I do from a triaging standpoint is we align the complexity of alerts with the level of staff that we use. And so pharmacy technicians are sort of at this end of the spectrum. I've got first-year pharmacy students, second-year, third-year, fourth-year, and then my pharmacist. And so everywhere along that spectrum, we created a model where I can start with the least expensive staff, and then as we use our decision trees, clinical support, I transition up to the more expensive. But it was important for us to use that. When I first started, we hired just pharmacists, and I had a little bit of support, and we completely changed that model because it became too expensive to support everything with pharmacy services. So that was one of the mistakes that we learned in the model as we went and we were able to scale it. And then the last step is the service component. So we can do analysis of the data as much as we can, but healthcare is complicated. So I need a good clinician on the phone with the right person making the most appropriate clinical judgment. So that's where I try to combine the science and the art of medicine as part of the program. We offer several core products. Most of our business is in the Medicare space. So Medicare, the other sort of, in addition to meeting the need of preventing drug-related problems and providing extra support for patients, there was a regulatory opportunity that we took advantage. So in 2006, which really had a big impact of why we were able to launch, is when Medicare enacted the drug benefit. So prior to 2006, Medicare patients didn't have a drug benefit. Starting in 2006, that drug benefit allowed access to patients, but it also created some regulatory challenges for health plans because health plans had to have additional oversight. And so we came in as an oversight option and have really done a good job of being the standard of care for that option. Part of it being people want to work with pharmacists, but knowing pharmacists are expensive, we've been able to come up with a business model that scales that. So the reach of the program. I told you a little bit when we first started, we had about 1,000 patients we were trying to manage. This last year, we had 60 million patients in our database. From that, we did 3.3 million recommendations to change drug therapy. So not everybody we talked to, because they could be monitored, there could be other clinical situations, require a drug change. But in 3.3 million cases, we recommended a very specific drug change. And think about what we're trying to do. We're doing it remote. The pharmacists that we have, when we do the initial call, don't necessarily have a relationship with the patient. They're part of the program. We're affiliated with a health plan. We're affiliated with their community pharmacy. So we're not even trying to do a lot of nuanced stuff. So the 3.3 million are sort of the no-brainer. These are things that need to be fixed because there's so many gaps in the healthcare system. From those 3.3 million drug-related problems that we did interventions on, that was a result of personal consultations with about 300,000 patients. The number of interventions that we make per patient tends to be 2 to 3. So the rest of those would be direct provider outreach. So if I can't get a hold of the patient, then we're doing provider outreach. But it's crazy to think that the program that we started with just 12 years ago now had a very real impact on over 3 million patients. This year, we expect that to double. So the story. This is what I wanted to kind of spend the most time on and tell you the story and how I got to where I was. So I told you in 2005 I had this, I guess, I'll tell it exactly how it went. But I'm a pharmacist, so I'm passionate about preventing drug-related problems. Medicare was coming out with a Medicare drug benefit. And so that was sort of a vision that I had, or the basis for the concept. I was at a meeting where a health plan stood up and basically said, hey, we're going to be in the Medicare Part D space, Medicare drug benefit space. We know we're going to need help from clinical oversight. We don't know how to do it. And it was at a national convention, probably 100 different pharmacy schools represented. The person stood up, asked this question, and everybody left the room. And so I walked up to him at the end and I said, I can help. He said, how can you help? I don't quite know, but I can help. I'll figure it out. And so we really talked about what their need was and how their need was to scale a program across the country. So they didn't have the ability to consult with in-house staff that wasn't broad enough. They didn't have the ability to work with community pharmacists because they didn't have a way to support that network. So they needed something different, a solution. And so for me, I looked back on sort of what resources we had at the university that I could tie together. The Poison Control and Drug Information Center was a big piece of it. It's a pharmacist call center that provides some of the most clinical consultations over the phone. So my idea was basically, could we create a similar model, but instead of focusing on toxicology, we focus on chronic illness. And at the time, in the pharmacy space, it was a very revolutionary idea for a pharmacist to do chronic disease management over the phone with a patient, because how could you do that complex of interaction not face-to-face? And my argument was always, if they can do it in toxicology and life-threatening situations, we can certainly do it in diabetes management. We just have to figure out how. So I hired 6 of my friends to convince them, 6 pharmacy friends to convince them to help me put this together. I hired 3 pharmacy technicians because I figured they need support staff, and I hired a programmer. I should say before I hired the programmer, before I hired that 10 staff, which we started with, I went back to the health plan and secured the contract based on the program that I didn't quite have yet. So this is, like I said, you don't have to know all the answers. Just be brave and jump right in. So I got the health plan to come out and visit us. I wanted them to tour the Boesen Center because it's one of the unique Boesen centers across the country because it's pharmacist run. And at the time, they were building the Drachman Hall building. So I arranged for a tour of the Drachman Hall building with everybody's hard hats and everything. I said, this is our center. This is where we'll be. So I got the contract signed and then was able to hire against it. So that's how we started. Very little planning. In 2010, so we grew and we were able to get that first health plan contract. We did a lot of stuff manually in the first couple of years. In 2008, we really started to develop software because other health plans were contacting us and wanted to scale the solution. 2008 is really when we started to develop the software. In 2010, we'd gone from about 1,000 patients to 1 million patients. And to me, that was an opportunity and a quick realization that I couldn't run it within the university anymore. All this was university contracts. I was faculty in the College of Pharmacy. I was running my other full-time faculty job, getting this set up. So in 2010, I approached the prior tech launch group at the university to really try to figure out how can I scale this out in an effective way. At the time, the university didn't have Tech Launch Arizona. Tech Launch Arizona came in and drastically changed everything. This timeline would have been greatly shortened if I had had the tech launch that you guys have access to today. So from 2010 to 2013, basically, I made more mistakes in tech launch. I didn't file patents. I didn't file copyrights. I didn't do anything that you would do to protect intellectual property. So that is obviously a big mistake and something that I probably should have done. But we were able to overcome it and still make it a success. In 2013, that's when Tech Launch came in and I had the opportunity. The university had new administration. Tech Launch Arizona was started. And I had the opportunity to meet with the Tech Launch folks. And that was probably the other factor that launched us to where we are today, is sitting down with the Tech Launch folks and figuring out, what do I have? Is it something that's marketable? Is it something that's a viable spinoff? And never once did I talk to them and they thought it wasn't. It was always a matter of, well, what do you do? Well, I don't have any patents, so don't worry about that. We'll figure that part out. Well, I haven't done this. Don't worry about that. We'll figure that part out. So it's always a matter of me just saying, hey, here's what I am. This is what I think I can do. And Tech Launch really helping find a way. So that was sort of step 1 of how they really helped me. Step 2 was finding an external partner to help me out. So as a university faculty, I've got this growing business. I see a huge market for it. I want to share in that. I want to grow in that. And I know a big piece of that is as we spin out, and whether I try to run it myself, we try to get capital investment, we work with a venture capital company, we work with an existing health plan, we work with a startup. Where I end up is a key piece of my own personal happiness and success and ability to do it. So Tech Launch not only worked with me to find out what we needed from financial support, company support, whatever it was, but also a partner, an actual business partner that was a good personality fit for me and a good cultural fit for our organization and what we're spinning out. So in 2013, we spun out to a company of a new healthcare company called SinfoníaRx Corp. That was founded by a couple healthcare entrepreneurs, Fletcher McCusker and Michael Deitch. I would have not met Fletcher or Michael without the support of Tech Launch. and they were the perfect cultural fit for us. I had two things that I wanted to do. So at the time, I had this technology piece that I wanted to scale, I wanted to invest in, I wanted to attract more business with, but I also had this call center model where everybody in the call center was a College of Pharmacy staff member or student, and it promoted their education, it created unique research opportunities. I wanted to leave that at the university. And Fletcher and Michael are very supportive of Tucson, the university community, and really bought into that vision and helped support that. So I worked with Fletcher and Michael. We successfully funded the spin out, grew it close to where we are today to within September of last year, SinfoníaRx, which was a wholly owned subsidiary of Sinfonia Healthcare Corp., was sold to our new parent company, Tabula Rasa HealthCare. So we went from the university to a small Tucson startup. I'm now part of Tabula Rasa HealthCare, which is a publicly traded healthcare company and one of the fastest growing healthcare companies in the country right now. So that's where I am, which is exciting. Since I've been there, the stock has almost tripled, which I like to think was solely because of us, which is fun to watch too. But the company is a really good company, and they offer a lot of things. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to grow within the company. It's been a great infrastructure. They are still supportive of our call center model in collaboration with the university, so it's been a great cultural fit for us as well. Culture is the last piece. So I will tell you, in addition to having your mission, you have to know what your culture is, because it's been said that culture is more important than strategy or any business model. Having the ability for us to move from the university to Sinfonia Healthcare Corp. was a great cultural fit. Being acquired by Tabula Rasa is another great cultural fit. The founders of that company are pharmacist husband and wife. They are very pharmacist-centric in what they do. They believe in the problems of medication-related problem and solving those. They're very much a family company. We hire with our own company. We have a lot of friends and family. So cultural fit has been probably the most important thing. So that's why I say when Tech launched Work With Me, there were other people that we could have spun out from the university with and partnered with. But in addition to finding a good business fit, they found a great cultural fit as well. So that's my presentation. So I think I'm great on time. I wanted to leave plenty of opportunity for questions and answers. I know it looks like everybody's done with lunch, so hit me with your questions.
Kevin?
Yes.
Great presentation, by the way. It's awesome. And also, I think the message that you keep delivering, that just do it and make it happen, is a really good one. I'm wondering about, with the patient medication, a lot of the problem has to do with human behavior and patients taking their medication, remembering to take their medication, things like that. Do you guys focus on behavioral intervention?
We do. I'm just going to repeat the question to make sure I have the mic. But the question is, a lot of medication-related problems are due to patient behavior, and do we address that? A lot of what we address is patient education, because that's a key component of it. And so much of it is we think about health literacy and in the academic space. A lot of times people think about health literacy in terms of education levels or language barriers, other cultural differences. But the reality is healthcare in and of itself is a completely different language. So you can be a Fortune 500 CEO and you have the lowest healthcare literacy. And so a lot of what we do is make sure that patients understand the conditions that they have, the reasons that they're on the medication, and what the expected change is. So we're not calling them up saying, hey, your diabetes medication is important for you. We're having a conversation of why it's important, what are some of the long-term consequences, what are the goals of therapy that you can monitor. And we're finding that we're one of the only ones to be able to do that for them. And because it's such a fragmented system, you think about when you go to the physician, it's usually problem-based. And so you have 5 minutes, maybe FaceTime, to address a specific problem. You go to the pharmacy, you want to get in and out of the pharmacy as quick as you can. So you may be there for 30 seconds, you may or may not see the pharmacist. Nobody sits down with you and talks about your entire medication profile so that you understand what it is that you have. And so patient education is a big part of it. And so what we try to do is for patients that need that the most is to schedule more time and follow-up interaction. We also think about, and this is where the university's really helped me, is to think about I can't just tell patients things. I learned as a faculty member that adults learn very different than kids, right? So when I'm talking to someone that's not a child, they're very well educated, I have to remember that I can't dump everything on them. We always think lecture is the worst way to transfer information, so I can't just talk to them for a half hour and expect them to retain. So we try to piece it up and have multiple conversations, having new knowledge connect to old knowledge. So that's part of why I truly value the university partnerships, is because in a lot of what we do, there's a lot of people involved in sort of assessing and providing quality oversight of what we do, which then relates to a lot of the research that comes out of the center.
So who pays for your services?
So where do we get our money? So our revenue comes from health plans who contract with us to provide services on behalf of their patients.
But the health plan, how do they benefit from that?
So the benefit to the health plan is the health plans ultimately are at risk for all the cost associated with the patient. So if I find drug-related problems and I prevent hospitalizations, that's an opportunity for them. If there's duplicate therapies and I can reduce drug cost, that's an opportunity for them. One of the things I haven't talked about is we can do some analysis and work with patients on chronic pain who are on high opioid doses and looking at some of the things. So there's value to health plans to try to manage both their medication spend, but not necessarily the medications. It's more about how do we manage the overall health. So what's driving healthcare costs more than anything else is chronic illness. There's a lot of focus on the high cost of biologics, the cost of things like hepatitis C, but the real cost is diabetes. And because it's not super cool to talk about, there's not a lot of people in that space really trying to manage that. But if we can cut the cost of diabetes or at least prevent it from expanding, then the health plans have more money to provide services and support.
And the second question is related to this one. So you mentioned about the interventions, 3 million interventions, and 300,000, it came down to. Will you be able to measure on the ground what difference you made by these interventions?
We do. So the questions related to, of the interventions we make, are we able to measure the impact of that? So we do it in a few different ways. Is because I get the data, when I make an intervention, there's an expected change that I can track. And so we monitor that. That's part of what's built into the system. The second part of it is what impact does it have to society? What does it do to overall healthcare costs over time? And we work with researchers at the university. So part of what we do from a funding standpoint is to fund faculty and graduate students who do outcomes-based research. So they'll look at things like impact on hospitalizations, impact on overall healthcare costs, and things like that. So we have a very aggressive publication strategy. I have more that I invest in publications and research than I do in marketing, because just getting the word out about this is what I use from a marketing standpoint. So we have a great team of researchers at the College of Pharmacy here. Terry Warholic leads that. And then she works with a fellow that we support at Ohio State University, and then hopefully going to work in UT as well. One of my visions is to use this to create some multi-institutional national grant applications and projects to really tackle healthcare. So I'm not going to be one of the ones that say it's too complicated. I'm going to keep digging in and try to see if we can solve it. But I do want to say from a number standpoint, like we're at 3 million interventions now, 60 million patients. We literally started out with 1,000. I think if you got one person and one idea, you can create this. Like I said, it's fun to be a success story, but looking back over 12 years, I can put 7 slides together. It's important to remember that a starting point can be anything. It can be as simple as if you have a mission, a vision, and you're able to help one person, then you can probably scale that somehow.
So, and how did you get into being able to access like 60 million or so?
It started, so the question is, how did we expand our access? So it started with one health plan. Healthcare is a small community. And so the one health plan we started with, most of our business development has been word of mouth. I go out and I talk a lot about the health plans that we work with. One health plan turned to 2 health plans, turned to 3 health plans. The smaller health plans merged with the bigger health plans. Then I'm in competition with some internal programs. You know, we have a really good model. The business of it fits, so we're able to get health plans to get rid of their internal programs and continue to outsource. As these mergers and acquisitions happen too, that's benefited us because we're working with smaller health plans that get absorbed by bigger health plans as well, which is a lot of our growth. Yes?
Thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation. Tell me about how the insurance companies say, hey, come work with us, or we want to contract with you. Do you do disease management? What are the measures? Also, what do they measure besides, you know, reducing costs? I imagine they look at readmissions. Do they possibly let some employees go because they're no longer, it sounds like you're doing kind of somewhat of a case management model. And how does that all coordinate?
Yeah, so the question is, when health plans work with us, how do we, what services do we decide we're going to provide? What do we call it? How does it work? So how many of you have worked at health plans? So for the, nobody? So for the most part, how many, like you work here, right? So you probably have 10 different things that you wish you could do every day that you don't, right? So my typical entry point to a health plan is to talk about what are the needs that they have that they're not addressing. So, you know, one of my favorite business quotes is from the movie Robots, see a need, fill a need. So it's more about me not, I call our product medication management, medication therapy management, but it's more about me approaching the customer and finding out what their gaps are. We work with Tucson Medical Center and we do a transition and care program. Tucson Medical Center obviously tries to manage their readmissions as well. They have an internal group of case managers that support patients at high risk for readmission, and they do a great job of it. But they have limited resources on how they can do that. And so we talked about who are the patients that you wish you could touch that you aren't, and let's start with that. And so a lot of it is, where are your pain points? And then I know that I can solve a number of them, but I don't go to them with a solution until I know what the problem is, if that helps.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question. After the discharge, how close after a patient is discharged from the hospital do you make contact? And then part 2 is, how do you coordinate with all these other entities that happen within the first 6 weeks?
Awesome. So the question is more details around our discharge program, which is one of my favorite programs and sort of was an evolution of my thinking as well. So I'll tell a little story. So before we developed our discharge program, I knew pharmacists could provide not only direct patient support, but we could help health systems and physician offices manage their patients as well as hospitals. So when a patient's discharged, how do you coordinate with the primary care physician, the specialist, the community pharmacist, the hospital in order to make that work? My initial thought was, I'll have my pharmacist reach out and have that happen. So we started a pilot with a physician group here in town, and I had a pharmacist go over. They were going to go to the clinic a day a week. They'd do those high-risk patients. And so my pharmacist would go to the clinic a day a week, and they'd come back. They wouldn't see any patients. They wouldn't have talked to any of the physicians. And I was like, huh, that's weird. So part of my experience professionally was as a drug rep. So I used to, in the suburban Chicago, used to go to physician's office. I know how hard it is to get integrated with a physician office. But I also know some of the best ones that I worked with were nurses. So I hired one nurse, and I was like, hey, can you help make this program work? The first day she went, now I had a pharmacist go probably for 6 months, never saw a patient, couldn't get physician time. The nurse in the first day had a seat, access to the EHR, and was getting appointments scheduled for her. And I was like, oh. So part of it was me evolving into, if I'm going to interact with people, how am I going to do that? And I need to evolve. And so we have now a nursing team that is the initial point of contact for the hospital. So when the hospital's doing the discharge, case management's referring to them. The nurse then is the key point of contact between the hospital, the specialist's office to get the appointment scheduled, the primary care physician's office to get that. The pharmacist will do the consultation, and then the nurse will follow up with all the parties as well as the community pharmacy. So it was really more a change in the staffing and the expertise of the staff that I had and leveraging that a little bit. But I did spend a lot of time trying to figure out how do I make this work. And it was like just hiring this one nurse to give it a try that completely changed the program. And now we have a number of nurses that work out of our call center, as well as a number of nursing students from the College of Nursing work in the call center too.
So I want to take you back before, you mentioned about you've had your faculty job all the way?
Yes.
To now?
I had, my faculty role, from 2006 till about 2010, I maintained my faculty role. Now, my faculty job was a little bit unique, so it's probably different than everybody else's faculty job. I was hired as the experiential director for the College of Pharmacy. So at most of the time that I was working, I was in charge of scheduling the students' fourth-year rotations. So the students spend 3 years in pharmacy school, and then their fourth year is a set of 7 6-week rotations. And so my job was to have enough clinical sites and to assign the students to the sites and then deal with the occasional problem with the site or the student, which didn't happen very much because the faculty, the preceptors are great, the students are all awesome. So that's what I did and managed that full time from 2006 to 2010 at the same time that I was building this. It was a lot of the business model, a lot of my sales presentations was do my faculty job during the day, do this at night, which just was a lot of work. Nobody assigned that to me. It was just something that I really wanted to do. And I feel if you're passionate about things, you guys probably are working 24 hours a day anyway. So it's just a matter of spending some time on the things that are really interesting to you. And so by 2010, when we reached 1 million patients, it became too much for me to manage. So I started to phase out of my faculty job. I hired some staff to help manage that. By 2013, I had phased completely out of my primary faculty responsibilities. But one of the best things about being at the university is the exposure to students and working with students. So I love the call center model because we have a couple hundred students there that are employed. And then I teach. I come back and teach. For a couple years, I tried to teach an elective, but I also do most of our sales. So it became difficult to travel and manage a full elective. But I do 6 lectures in our communications course every fall as well. So I've still maintained a piece of it. But I think any entrepreneur has their full-time job to pay their bills, and sort of the vision comes in the off hours. But it never really seemed like work to me. I have 2 kids, too. I have one that was born in 2002 and 2004. So in 2006, they were 4 and 2. So a lot of it was like after everybody went to bed, sort of working on it. So that's sort of the reality of being an entrepreneur, is trying to figure that out. Yes?
Kevin, we have is it Rick Lasica online? L-A-S-I-C-A?
Yes, you have a question?
Yeah. He says, hi, Kevin, great presentation. Can you, I guess he didn't hear the first part of your presentation. Can you briefly talk about the building downtown and kind of the history behind it, how that renovation is going? He also wanted to know how the ballroom is actually looking.
All right. So it is so hey, Rick. So there's a couple people I'm trying to tell the story, but we moved, so when we left the College of Pharmacy to do this startup, SinfoníaRx, we moved into a really cool warehouse office at the corner of Stone and Toole. It was just giant loft style, open office space, and it was really cool. It was fun to be in. The challenge was it was against the train tracks. So you have a ton of trying to do conference calls and trying to mute and time everything right. So we graduated from that. We needed better space. But I didn't want to leave the coolness of this loft style space. So I wanted to try to find some space in Tucson that would be cool and functional, but also it would be cool and functional. So I looked around at a lot of different spaces, and the Pioneer building is an office building downtown. It used to be the hotel. If you Google it, it's associated with the fire. It was a fire. There were a number of people that were killed in the fire in the 70s. So basically it was shut down for a while, renovated, turned into office space. So I do have employees that tell me it's but all the ghosts are nice. But But what was cool about it is I was looking for office space, and we went into the first floor space, and it had been broken up into little conference rooms with drop ceilings. And so when we kind of opened up the ceiling tile to see what it would look like if we opened it up, you can see the original 1920s ceiling tiles, almost fully preserved in the space. And I thought, what a cool space would it be? Central downtown, historic building. It's critical to our culture. We're Tucson born and bred. We love the university. We love being downtown. What a cool thing would it be to rehab that space? And so the space itself includes that first floor ballroom. That'll be our entryway. And then we have almost all of the second floor that's kind of loft style around the ballroom. And in our big conference room, there's a picture window that you can overlook the ballroom. And so right now, the ballroom, they've done most of the plaster work. They've created molds to repair some of the ceiling tiles. So those will be fantastic. I think they're probably a couple months away, but they've done all the heavy lifting. They figured out the HVAC. They've got all the demo done. So now they're just building and putting the finishing touches on it. My vision is that we would use that space for organizations to meet downtown. So maybe possibly the Tucson Chamber, some nonprofit organizations who need meeting space, because it's going to be big. It's a lot bigger than I thought once they've opened it up. So there's great space to hold meetings. And then there's a mezzanine level before you get up to our space where we're going to display some of the College of Pharmacy museum pieces. And so we'll have a College of Pharmacy museum, sort of having this creation of one of my favorite things about pharmacy is the history of pharmacy. So, there's so many things that are technology advanced about what we do in pharmacy. And then there's things like you carry a paper prescription to the pharmacy. So there's this mix of like the history and the new. So we want to create that with the space. It's a 1920s space with the museum pieces going up into then a high-tech office space on the second floor.
What's the timeline?
So we're in the second floor now. We moved in about a month ago, and I think the ballroom, I'll be ready in 2 months, if I had to pick, say 6 weeks. Yes?
So with any good idea, there's always me too's. So who are your competitors, and how are you maintaining your competitive edge?
So the question about me too's and how do we differentiate ourselves, so much of it, and this is where I think philosophically we're a little bit different than most, is I don't think you can do the technology without the service, and I don't think you can do the service without the technology. Most of our competitors are either service organizations or technology companies. And so much technology in the healthcare space allows for scalability, but because healthcare is so complicated, to me, you can't eliminate the human element of it, as complex as you get. So I think that's our key differentiator is we have the technology plus the service. We're also very solution-oriented. So we don't come with a product. We come with a solution. So we spend a lot of time getting to know what our clients' needs are and filling that space, which you don't see a lot of times in business. A lot of times in business, it's here's the idea, and I don't care if it's a round hole. I'm going to put my square peg in it. So those are the pieces. So I think there's like 5 minutes left-ish, if that clock's right. Yes?
So what's your current role after being, the company was acquired?
Good point. What do I do? So when the company was acquired by Tabula Rasa, I basically we were a wholly owned subsidiary of Sinfonia. Now I'm a wholly owned subsidiary of Tabula Rasa. So I'm the CEO of SinfoníaRx. I report directly to the CEO of Tabula Rasa. Tabula Rasa has some technology and services that they offer. So part of what I'm spending this year on is trying to develop planning around what is the combination of their services and our services, their technology and our technology work. So I'm the CEO. I run all the operations of SinfoníaRx. I've also, until I hired my first sales business development person, that'll start in June. So everything you've seen, I've been the sole salesperson of the organization. So much of it is having this personal connection to what it is that you do and this passion that probably sells it more than anything else. So I've managed the strategy, the business development, the day-to-day operations, everything involved with SinfoníaRx. And in 2019, we're really looking on how do we combine that with Tabula Rasa. And I think there's an opportunity for a lot of leaders on our side to really develop and create leadership positions. And so you can see this blending of Tabula Rasa and SinfoníaRx maybe over 2 to 3 years.
Any last questions?
Well, again, I want to thank everyone for coming. It's like I said, it's an honor to be here. I want, hopefully you got that I'm not smarter than anybody else. So what I've done is through a series of a lot of trial and error, a lot of just passion. So I would encourage you, if you have ideas, to talk to Tech Launch. If you feel like your idea, like you've done everything wrong and you haven't followed the Tech Launch roadmap and you're maybe here and you should have been, don't worry about that. They'll get you to where you need to be and they'll figure it out. So if you have good ideas and you're passionate, go explore those. And again, thank you. I really appreciate you taking an hour of your time to hear my story. Thanks so much. I kept wanting to adjust this, but you can't. It's not there.
No.
It's like right up against your face.
Hey,
Yeah.
How are you? I had a quick question for
Yeah.
you. It's more research oriented, so I didn't want to ask it during this time. I'm at the Center for Innovation Brain Science, and one of their goals is to look at medications that delay Alzheimer's, ALS, Parkinson's.
Oh,
Look
you've
at
got
some of the
the
studies.
other one still.
Is that kind of data available with you, and can we do a collaboration?
No.
Yeah, we absolutely.